Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. After covering several games of the World Blitz and Rapid, we're going to change gears here and move on to the Champions Chess Tour, an online event which took place during 2024 and finalized with the finals in Oslo, Norway in December, where 8 players took on each other for the win, playing online but sitting in front of each other. It was that event where you all saw the players with the headsets, listening to their music and playing face to face these rapid games. So let's take a look at 2 of the miniatures from that tournament. In today's video, we're going to feature a game between Levon Aronian, USA Olympic player, former Armenia, obviously one of the best players in the world for the last 20-25 years, with the white pieces, and with the black pieces, Wesley So, again USA, former Philippine player, tremendous ability as a player, very solid, very precise, loses very few games in classical chess. Of course, here we're playing rapid. Both of them are very good, and on a given day can beat anyone in the world, including Magnus Carlsen. So let's take a look at the game, and I think you'll enjoy this one, especially if you're a PIRC defense fan. So Levon started the game with e4, and Wesley played d6, which is one of the lines he uses. He hardly ever plays it in classical chess, and maybe after this game he won't take it up again in rapid chess, we'll see. But it's something he brings to the table every now and then. d4, knight f6, hitting the e4 pawn, knight c3, g6. This is the PIRC defense. Personally, I enjoy playing the Austrian attack, which is pawn to f4. Or alternatively, I play the 150 attack, which is to play bishop to e3 and then f3, queen to d2, long castle, aggressive lines. However, every now and then, I also choose the line which Aronian played in this game, which is knight f3, the Karpov positional approach, bishop to g7, bishop to e2, castle and castle. This is a very solid approach, very stable, very solid. I think it's quite good for Aronian's style. Now, of course, black can play here many different moves. Knight to bd7, theoretical. Bishop to g4, theoretical. Knight to c6, theoretical. Even knight to a6 has been played in this position. So many different moves. Wesley goes for c6, which has never been to me a move which seems very dangerous, but it does prepare b5 and then maybe b4, hitting the pawn on e4 with the knight. So normally in these structures, if someone plays c6 against you, you automatically play a4, which of course Aronian knows, controlling b5, but also at some point threaten to advance to a5 and closing down the queen side. Bear in mind that when white plays, if and when white plays a5, black can hardly go b5 because we capture en passant, and black can never take back with the pawn because of the rook. So this would damage black's structure severely. In the game, Levon plays bishop to e3, which is a very sensible move. Maybe black could have played knight to g4 here, against which I'm sure Aronian would have played bishop to g5 and then push h3 and knock the knight back. Wesley plays e5. This is a sensible move, and there are different ways to go here with white. We can just play queen to d2, keep the tension. Black will improve his position, putting pressure on e4, threatening to take here at all moment. So queen to d2 is good. Rook to e1 is also very sensible. h3 would also be a very sensible move. So we can just keep the tension with the pawn center. Just leave it there. Another approach which the computer seems to favor, which I don't personally like, but we have to bear in mind what the computer says. The computer wants to go d5 here and play this position. Now, I've always thought these positions were okay for black, and I still think they are. The computer tends to like them, maybe because of the space advantage, but they're very difficult to play. Black's idea is very clear, to attack on the on the queen side, on the king side. White's idea is not so clear, although ideas such as knight to b5 and then advance the pawns here are probably parts of the plan. The third approach, which is the one Aronian takes, is to trade pawns in the center. Pawn takes pawn, and bishop c4, improving the bishop and hitting on the pawn on h7. Now black has to be very careful here with knight to g5 at the precise moment. So black has to be quite careful. Now, typically in this position, black will play rook to e8, knight to d7, knight to f8, and then bishop to e6 or knight to e6 and finish the development. So that's black's plan, and white has to do something to avoid it if that happens. So knight b to d7. Now h3 is worthwhile, although a5 was also interesting. Black goes a5. This is okay. Queen to d2. Rook to e8. Now black is preparing knight to f8. So against this plan, Aronian comes up with the following idea. He plays rook to ad1 with the idea that against knight to f8, he can go queen to d6, forcing the exchange of queens. And Aronian probably thought that this position would give him a small but stable advantage. I think that if black plays carefully, he should be able to equalize here. But it must be said that with the rook on d1 and the bishop on b6, it's going to be hard for black to defend the a5 pawn and also fight for the d file. So I think black is slightly worse here. Instead of that, Wesley played a blunder. He played bishop to f8, no doubt trying to prevent queen to d6. However, remember I told you before, black has to be careful about the knight to g5 jump. Now is the moment to play knight to g5. Hitting f7, and now it's very difficult to defend f7. The only move is rook to e7. But now we just have to increase the pressure. So f4 is the move, putting the rook on the attack against the f7 pawn. Black took on f4. What to do? If he chases back the knight won't go back. The knight sacrifices on f7. And here there's a more or less forced line. And there are several ways to go for the win here, but queen to d8 is the best one. Now, white has sacrificed a piece for 2 pawns, but he's going to get the piece back. Knight to d7, another pawn, and black just doesn't have any moves. He can't take the bishop, and if he unpins, we swap on f8 and get the knight back with an extra exchange and 2 pawns. So things are looking very, very bad for black in these positions. By the way, this is actually 2 pieces for a rook, not a piece for a pawn. So it's 2 pieces for a rook and 2 pawns plus a massive attack. So Wesley played pawn takes pawn, bishop takes, and tried to block with the knight. And now a very nice move by Aronian, queen to f2. Just preparing queen to g3 if need be, but more importantly, putting pressure on f6 and f7. The immediate threat is to capture on e5 and then capture on f6. That is a threat that has to be parried. Black parries it with king to g7, also trying to unpin, but now the killer strike. Rook takes, bishop takes, and now bishop to g5. And here Aronian decided to resign. Sorry, Wesley decided to resign because the game is just hopeless. The knight is going to fall, and that would leave black with an extra exchange and a pawn, so a huge material advantage. And if black plays bishop to g7, we just exchange, and the queen comes in, creating a huge and massive mating attack in very few moves. So, a very strong performance by Aronian, and for all you guys out there, a new way or an interesting development in the PIRC defense, playing this pawn takes pawn, bishop to c4, and then try to control the d file and always keep the threat of knight to g5 in mind. And if you play the PIRC with black, I would personally refrain from playing this c6, knight to d7, e5 line, which is more or less okay, but it seems that white is having good chances to get a big advantage in this variation. Go for bishop to g4 and play with the exchange of the knight on f3, or alternatively play knight to c6, d5, which are very, very good lines for black. Hope you enjoyed today's video. See you in a couple of days with a new video. Meanwhile, try to improve, try to enjoy the game, learn, play some blitz games online, and come back and see the next video on the channel. Have a good day.